long before Rome dominated the Mediterranean, and long before medieval kingdoms drew maps of Europe, another empire connected vast stretches of the ancient world. The Achaemenid Empire, often called the First Persian Empire, rose from the Iranian plateau in the 6th century BC and became the largest empire humanity had yet seen. At its height, it stretched from the Balkans and North Africa in the west to the Indus Valley in the east. This was not just a collection of conquered lands. It was a system that linked cities, languages, religions, roads, armies, taxes, and royal authority across an enormous territory. Its rulers faced the same central question every empire faces: how do you govern people who do not all speak the same language, worship the same gods, or live under the same traditions? Persia's answer helped shape imperial government for centuries. The story begins in Persis, a region in the southwest of the Iranian plateau. By the 7th century BC, Persian peoples had settled there, living near older and more powerful civilizations. The Persians were not originally the obvious candidates to rule the Near East. To their north and west stood major powers with deeper political traditions, including the Medes, the Lydians, and the Neo-Babylonian Empire. These states controlled strategic cities, trade routes, and armies. Yet from this relatively modest base, one ruler transformed Persian fortunes: Cyrus the Great. Cyrus belonged to the Achaemenid dynasty, and around 550 BC he began the chain of conquests that would turn a regional kingdom into a new imperial order. His success was not just military. It also depended on diplomacy, legitimacy, and the ability to present Persian rule as stable, orderly, and even protective. Cyrus's first major breakthrough came with the defeat of Media. This mattered because Media was not a minor enemy, it was one of the dominant powers of the Iranian world. By overthrowing or absorbing Median authority, Cyrus gained access to military resources, noble networks, and a much wider political stage. He then turned west toward Lydia, a wealthy kingdom in Anatolia known for its resources and strategic position between the Aegean and the interior of Asia. The conquest of Lydia expanded Persian influence toward the Greek world and opened access to important routes and cities. Finally, Cyrus took Babylon, one of the most famous cities of antiquity. The fall of the Neo-Babylonian Empire gave Persia control over Mesopotamia, a region with ancient administrative traditions, urban wealth, and enormous symbolic prestige. With these victories, Cyrus did not merely add territory. He inherited the machinery of older civilizations and placed it under Persian command. One reason Cyrus became such a powerful figure in historical memory is that he was associated with a comparatively flexible style of rule. Ancient empires often relied on terror, deportation, and destruction to control defeated peoples. Persia could be ruthless when challenged, but it also became known for policies that allowed local customs, elites, and religions to continue under imperial supervision. This was not modern tolerance in the contemporary sense. It was a practical imperial strategy. If conquered peoples could keep their temples, languages, and local leaders, they were more likely to accept Persian supremacy. The king's authority remained supreme, but daily life did not have to be completely remade in a Persian image. This balance between central power and local continuity became one of the empire's greatest strengths. It allowed Persia to rule a mosaic of cultures without requiring every subject to become Persian. The empire's size created a massive administrative challenge. At roughly 5.5 million square kilometers at its peak, the Achaemenid realm was too large to govern like a single city-state or tribal kingdom. It included Anatolia, Mesopotamia, the Levant, Cyprus, parts of eastern Arabia, the South Caucasus, Central Asia, and lands reaching toward the Indus Valley. Distances were enormous, terrain varied, and communication was slow by modern standards. To manage this, Persian kings developed a centralized bureaucracy supported by regional administration. Provinces were overseen by officials who collected tribute, maintained order, and represented royal authority. The empire depended on a professional civil service as much as on armies. Documents, messengers, roads, and standardized procedures made royal decisions travel farther than a king's physical presence ever could. In this sense, Persia's real power was not only conquest. It was organization. Communication was the bloodstream of the Achaemenid system. The empire is remembered for major infrastructure projects, especially the royal road and an organized postal network. Roads allowed soldiers, officials, merchants, and messengers to move through the empire with unusual efficiency for the ancient world. A royal message could travel across vast distances by relay, passing from one rider or station to another. This did not make communication instant, but it made empire-wide coordination far more reliable. The road system also had economic and military benefits. Goods could circulate more easily, tax revenues could be collected more predictably, and armies could be directed toward trouble spots. Infrastructure is often less dramatic than battlefield victories, but it is what turns conquest into durable rule. Without roads and communications, an empire of this size would have been a map fantasy rather than a functioning state. Language was another tool of imperial connection. The Achaemenid Empire used Persian as a language of royal identity, but Aramaic became especially important as an administrative language across wide regions. This was a practical choice. Aramaic was already widely used in the Near East and could help officials communicate across diverse populations. Rather than forcing one spoken language on every subject, the empire used official languages to make administration work. This reveals something important about Persian rule: it was adaptable. The imperial center did not need to erase every local tradition if it could build a layer of governance above them. A merchant, priest, village leader, or provincial official might remain rooted in local culture while still participating in a larger imperial system. Later empires would face similar problems, and many would borrow the same basic solution: rule through bureaucracy, translation, record-keeping, and local intermediaries. The Achaemenid military was one of the pillars of the empire. A realm stretching from the Mediterranean to Central Asia required more than occasional tribal levies. Persia maintained a large army and, in key regions, a navy capable of projecting power across seas and coastlines. Its forces drew on the empire's diversity: cavalry, infantry, archers, engineers, and contingents from many subject peoples. This made Persian armies enormous and flexible, but also complex. They had to be supplied, coordinated, and led across difficult terrain. Military power allowed the kings to expand and suppress revolts, yet it also revealed the empire's limits. The farther Persian forces moved from their logistical base, the more complicated campaigns became. Empire is always a balance between reach and control. Persia could reach farther than any previous state of its kind, but even Persian resources were not infinite. The most famous limit to Persian expansion was Greece. After conquering Lydia and gaining influence in Anatolia, Persia came into contact and conflict with the Greek city-states. These wars unfolded over decades and involved multiple Persian kings. From the Persian perspective, Greece was one frontier among many, but it proved unusually difficult. The Greek mainland was politically fragmented, geographically challenging, and defended by communities with strong local identities. Persian campaigns could achieve impressive results, but permanent control of mainland Greece remained elusive. The eventual defeats there became central to Greek historical memory, often portrayed as a struggle between freedom and despotism. That picture is too simple. Persia was not merely a villain in someone else's origin story. It was a sophisticated imperial power facing a frontier where geography, naval warfare, local resistance, and political complexity made conquest costly and unstable. Despite the Greek setbacks, the Achaemenid Empire endured for more than 2 centuries. That longevity matters. Many conquerors build impressive realms that collapse almost immediately after their first victories. Persia lasted because it developed institutions. Kings came and went, rebellions broke out, and wars strained resources, but the imperial framework remained recognizable. It could collect tribute, mobilize troops, manage provinces, and maintain royal ideology across generations. Its kings presented themselves as rulers of a universal order, responsible for justice, stability, and the proper arrangement of the world under royal authority. This idea of kingship was grand, almost cosmic. The empire was not just land, it was a political universe centered on the king. Subjects might be culturally different, but they existed within a hierarchy that placed the Persian monarch at the top of an ordered world. The empire's end came not through slow disappearance, but through the astonishing campaign of Alexander the Great. Beginning in 336 BC, the Macedonian campaign against Persia rapidly escalated from invasion to conquest. By 330 BC, the Achaemenid Empire had been conquered in its entirety and annexed into Alexander's expanding Macedonian Empire. The fall was dramatic, but it should not be misunderstood as proof that Persia was weak or backward. Alexander succeeded by combining military genius, disciplined forces, political opportunity, and the vulnerabilities of a large empire under pressure. Once the imperial center was broken and the king's authority collapsed, the vast system that had held the realm together could be redirected or divided. Alexander did not simply destroy Persia, he inherited much of its imperial geography, wealth, and administrative logic. In many ways, the conqueror stepped into a world Persia had already organized. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, his empire fragmented, and much of the former Achaemenid territory passed into the hands of Hellenistic kingdoms, especially the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Kingdom. Yet Persian and Iranian political traditions did not vanish. Nearly a century later, Iranian elites in the Central Plateau reclaimed power from the Seleucids and established the Parthian Empire, which endured for centuries before being succeeded by the Sasanian Empire. This continuity shows the deeper legacy of Achaemenid rule. Persia created models of administration, roads, royal authority, multicultural governance, and imperial scale that influenced later states in the Greco-Roman world and beyond. The Achaemenid Empire matters because it proved that a vast, diverse world could be governed through systems rather than constant destruction. It was the ancient world's first true superpower, and its shadow stretched far beyond its fall. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.